Hello and welcome to Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our multi-tester review of the Puma Fast-FWD Nitro Elite. So the Fast-FWD is Puma's short distance racing shoe. It adds to their stable of carbon racing shoes along with the Deviate Nitro Elite 2, which is also launching today, and that is more of a general purpose lightweight racing shoe. And then there's the Fast-R shoe, which is billed more as a marathon racing shoe. It's very propulsive, but really there's a little bit of overlap between the Fast-R and the Deviate Nitro Elite 2, whereas the Fast-FWD actually does stand out a bit more as a distinctive short distance racing shoe. It's lighter and it's got this very noticeable geometry built for those shorter events. It costs £200 in the UK or $220 in the US. There's a 36mm stack height at the heel, which drops to 27 at the forefoot for a 9mm drop. And in my UK size 9, it weighs 204 grams or 7.4 ounces. So it's a very lightweight shoe, the lightest Puma shoe, and it sits between the Fast-R and the Deviate Nitro Elite 2 in terms of price. Deviate Nitro Elite 2 still comes in a fair bit cheaper than the other options there. So the shoe has a lightweight monomesh upper, and the Puma tape has been used fairly liberally around here to create a bit more structure there, whilst keeping the upper very lightweight. You've got minimal amounts of heel cushioning, and then the heel fin, which is basically just to create a little bit of stability there whilst also looking sick. The midsole is Nitro Elite, which is Puma's PIBA based foam, and you've got a full length power plate running through the shoe, which you can see there with the big midsole cutout underneath. That's not the only cutout on the shoe. As you can see, there's an undercut of the heel and most notably the forefoot. There's a really substantial undercut on the forefoot there and a little one on the heel. Idea being to push you onto your midfoot and just running very fluidly at those fast paces for shorter events and track sessions, that kind of thing. So whole geometry of the shoe is geared towards making that happen, and it's not easy to run any other way in the shoe, it's fair to say. So you've got the big midsole cutout, but actually of the parts of the shoe that will come into contact with the ground, and there's not a lot of it left, there is very good rubber coverage. You've got a full Puma Grip LT outsole on all the parts of the foam that are going to hit the ground. You've got good grip at the heel and forefoot as a result, with that massive cutout there to keep the weight very low. Alright, I'm joined by Tom now, and first thing we're going to discuss is the fit of the shoe, Tom.
Yeah, it's true to size. It's quite a figure-hugging shoe. It's definitely a verging on the elite level of fit, but I would say true to size.
Yeah, I think it's true to size too. It actually fits me quite nicely. I've got a narrow foot. I like a fairly tight fit in the racing shoe, but I think the toe box is quite roomy in this, so yeah, no problems, true to size. Run test. So this is pretty much a pure racing shoe. Like, I've gone and done one track session in it, but mainly our testing has been races, right, Tom? So how have you found the Fast-FWD for running fast over short distances?
Very good. I mean, that is ultimately the aim of this shoe. It's fast, nippy, propulsive speed over short distances, I think. I did a quite successful park run in this, 5k race in it, and it felt great for that. And I've also done some longer distance stuff where I've not been going all out, so more towards my marathon pace, and I didn't really enjoy it for those runs. It just felt like it didn't want to do that. It feels very light, very nimble, but it's not a very comfortable shoe to sort of settle into a pace in and enjoy. Yeah,
Puma calls it like a track spike for the road. I do get that similar kind of feeling when I'm pulling on spikes, which is like, you're here to run fast. Like, if you try and do anything else in the shoe, it isn't going to feel very good at all, and there's a little bit of fear to it, especially as a heel striker. But actually, before we go on to me, Tom, you're a midfoot striker, so this didn't feel that weird. I guess it's where you'd be landing anyway on a shoe.
Yeah, I mean, the heel's irrelevant to me. Didn't notice anything from that. I think there's a nice rolling action in this shoe. So I'm a midfoot striker, and it really does roll you forward quite comfortably into that motion. And it's not like a vaporfly motion where it's sort of rolling you and bouncing you forward. It's really just very quickly nipping you onto your forefoot. And I did really like it from that. I think it works perfectly for my running style, and I enjoyed it.
I'd actually say probably the people who might have the most problem with it are forefoot strikers, because there is just no forefoot. Like, it's really not, you're not getting that much cushion there almost. But yeah, as a heel striker, when running fast, I probably am landing slightly towards the back of the midfoot more than all-out heel striking. So I don't think this I did find this actually worked pretty well. Like, it felt quite natural to me. It didn't feel weird, even though it looks very weird. I did feel like I was getting a nice roll through, very punchy roll through. So I've raced a 10k in Battersea Park in this shoe, which was quite a weird one. It was a few weeks after Valencia Marathon, and we were all there together, and I've got a very eerie feeling running around the park. I wasn't enjoying it very much, and I was running by myself in like 5th place or something. And but I got to the end, I went, Oh, I've actually run quite quickly. Both my watches were out of whack entirely. Like the stride pod had gone nuts. I hadn't managed to start the Polar Watch. I was just running to feel and go, I'm just going to breeze around here. And I ran like a 33.53, which is along with my PB pace, but I wasn't anywhere near PB shape. And to run back-to-back sub-17s and feel very cruisy in this shoe, actually. It did feel like, at the start I went out quite fast. It felt very aggressive. I was really going for it, and then settled into a pace. And towards the end, I was tiring and my heart wasn't really in it, but I was just rolling along and my pace didn't really drop that much. So I do think it is an efficient shoe for that kind of distance. I will say though, at the end of that race, my feet were a bit beat up. I wouldn't want to race past 10k in it. Puma says this is for 5k, 10k. I think Elite might look at it for half marathons, but I don't think I'd enjoy going further than that. But I will say you've got to kind of run with it the way it is. And like in that race, I was quite controlled. I didn't fall apart. I felt quite good. My action was quite good all the way to the end. But I did do a park run in it where it was really, the first K was like a little bit uphill into the wind, and I just didn't really account for that. I just went out, so I blew up basically. I went out way too hard into that, running by myself, and just from there it was a bit of a struggle. And at that point, the shoe's geometry didn't work that well for me, so I was a bit rocking further back on my heels, and it was still tipping you forward and that, but it didn't work for me as well then as I'm sure it would someone who is, like I say, natural midfoot striker like Tom, who would then roll just further back on the midfoot maybe when tired. You'd still be getting, I think, the action from the shoe, whereas it still felt good and fast, but there are certainly shoes I'd have rather been in that day.
Yeah, definitely. The cushioning on it is actually surprisingly quite good. It's quite soft, and I didn't expect that when I first took it out. So for me, landing on it is pretty nice experience. But what I really get from the shoe is, I like a cushion shoe. I like a nice, soft, bouncy cushion shoe. And yes, I can run. I found that I could run a good pace for me, like my top pace in these shoes. But I just didn't enjoy it as much as if I was wearing one of my other carbon race shoes. So I think it's very good, but I think it's an acquired taste. But for track, it was absolutely fantastic. I used it for track a couple of times, and it's sort of, it was the sweet spot for me on track. Those short, sharp bursts. And it really helped because it's a very, very light shoe on the feet. Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned that because I was about to say this is my favourite track shoe I think I've used in the last 6 months. Like I just did one session where I was running 400 and 800 metre reps, and yeah, just because it has got that vibe to it, like you're pulling on like a really fast, lightweight shoe here, and actually the weight is light, but in the past there have been lighter shoes. Actually, the first version of the Deviate Nitro Elite was lighter, the early Vaporflies were lighter, but this feels light and like a spike and just an all-out shoe, and on the track I loved it for that. And I haven't had any concerns about instability at all. I will say that with this shoe, like it's not stable obviously, but for short events, running fast, it wasn't something that was a factor for me. How about you, Tom?
Yeah, I've not had any issues with stability at all in it. I think it's when you first put it on, it does feel a little bit funny, I think, just because of the geometry of the shoe. But once I got into a motion, I was fine with it. And you just have to sort of get used to it, because when you land the first run you're doing it does feel a little bit different than what you're used to. But I don't think that's instability. I think that's more just getting used to the format of the shoe.
Yeah, actually, it is quite interesting, right? Like I said, because it is high stack still, and it is Nitro Elite. It's a Puma foam, soft, bouncy foam, so it does feel softer and bouncy than you might expect for a 5k race. I think the other ones that have come out in this area are lower stack, more aggressive. So it is a bit different in that regard. In many ways, it's a bit different. But the one thing that is the same to all Puma shoes is the grip is fantastic. This is a Puma Grip LT outsole, and you've got full rubber coverage there, which is quite surprising for a 5k shoe. Obviously, the rubber only covers the foam that's there, with the undercuts on the heel and the forefoot, the big midsole cutout. There's not a lot of outsole to cover, but what there is really well done. It's grippy. You can go hard at corners in 5Ks and be pretty confident you're not going to fall over.
It's a legendary outsole. Love it.
All right, Tom, on to the verdict. So it's fair to say this is a shoe with quite a targeted niche use. Within that use, how do you think it does? And do you think it's something that you'd recommend to lots of runners to pick up? Are there other shoes you think does that better? What do you reckon to the Fast-FWD?
So I would say that I like having this shoe. I liked it for track. I want to use it for track again. I like using it for short distance stuff. But if I was buying a race shoe, I wouldn't buy this, because there's other race shoes that I'd much rather have, and they're a lot more versatile for the sorts of runs that I'm doing. So I think it's a very specific type of shoe, and it's either, if you're a short distance runner, track runner, I think it's probably a good option. And I think there are some other options out there that a few of them are from Puma that are good for doing that. But for anyone else who's mainly doing longer distance stuff, it's a bit of an unnecessary shoe, especially for the price.
Yeah, for me, I think there's two questions almost with the fast forward is when you compare it to the other short distance racing shoes out there, the Takumi Sen, the Street Fly, the New Balance Pacer, is it the best of them? And then is it the best carbon shoe for its purpose, even though? That's the thing. So I think among those short distance shoes, I like it. I probably still slightly prefer the Adidas Takumi Sen 8. I really love that shoe. I know there's a 9 out, which I think is very similar. I haven't tested that yet, but I love that shoe. I find it really fast, snappy. It's a bit lighter even than this shoe and great for those 5K races. It's got a slightly more normal feeling ride, but it's still very propulsive and direct. And actually, I found that I could use for a half marathon. It was a bit more comfortable, a bit more versatile. So I still slightly prefer the Takumi Sen. I do like this a lot more than the New Balance Pacer or the Nike Street Fly, though. I think it's better than those shoes. I think the bigger problem, however, is the same with all these short distance shoes is I still don't think they're necessary because the Nike Vaporfly is the shoe I would reach for 5K, and it's also a shoe that I've got my marathon PB in, and it's also cheaper than all of these shoes now because it was in sale. So I'm still not entirely convinced a short distance carbon shoe market needs to exist. But within that market, if you're just looking at those shoes, I think it's right up there with the best of them. I'd probably still prefer the Takumi Sen slightly, especially as that's also offered in sales now. And this is quite a high price for what is a very targeted shoe. But the other concern we have, I suppose, is within Puma's range, there's some, I would probably still just get the Deviate Nitro Elite. We just started testing the 2, but that's a pretty lightweight shoe, a more normal ride, can use for short reps, can use for short races, has that extra versatility to go long in. Where would you sit this in Puma's range, Tom?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I'd go for the Deviate Nitro Elite. Did we just say? Yeah, Deviate Nitro Elite. I always get the names wrong. I'd go for that one as well. I've used that shoe for going out for a normal fast run around, just as a training run. I definitely wouldn't pick this up if I was thinking I'm going to go out for a run around the park, maybe at a tempo effort. So this is pretty much reserved for. I don't even think about this shoe unless I'm doing track, basically, or. And even with something like a 5K race, I've still got shoes that I prefer to use. I think this is just as good in some ways, but it's very specific. And I would, in terms of the Puma range, I think the Nitro Elite is probably the best buy for pretty much everyone. Yeah, so value. Looking at pure value, this is a shoe that's not going to be one that we'd recommend to loads of runners, but actually at the job it sets out to do, it does do it very, very well. But if you've got 200 quid, 220 quid just to spend on your track workout shoe that also do races, then it's, there's a case there for getting it. Even then, I probably would still get the Takumi Sen because I love that shoe so much. But this is a real thrill of a ride, and it feels very different pulling this on to most shoes. And if you're someone who wants basically a spike, that feeling of pulling on spikes, but actually spikes do trash your legs, and training in spikes regularly, is harder if you're then going to bounce back and do hard runs the next day, any kind of run the next day. This is got that spiky feel, but a little bit more comfort and protects the legs a bit better. Yeah, I still don't know what this fin at the back's for, though. The fin. There's two reasons for the fin, Tom, actually. Well, one is that, it does provide a bit of stability to the upper. It's basically the heel counter. The main reason, though, is that it looks gnarly, I guess. I think that's what they're really going for here. It does look gnarly. Yeah. It does look very gnarly. But as I say, I always try and take my shoes off the bad way with my bare the foot, and then it slides off that. Yeah, well, especially with these, because you've got no forefoot to press on it, so you definitely can't take your shoes off like that. Yeah. But it is a fine-looking shoe. People often mention, like, when I'm running around in this, they say, "Whoa, what's that?" Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'll explain. Yeah. So that's our full review of the Puma Fast-FWD Nitro Elite. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited by this shoe? Do you want to go out there and pull it on and get fast? Please do let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.